Kelowna, one of the most beautiful places in the world to live, surrounded by provincial parks, pine forests, vineyards, orchards, and mountains. Wouldn't it be great if there was a podcast about our love of Kelowna? Oh no, it's real. This is I Love Kelowna, an interview-style podcast about the fabulous and fascinating people that make up our great city and the Okanagan. Intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, creatives, and anyone who has an interesting story to tell about how they're contributing to our wonderful home. This is I Love Kelowna, and here's your host, Luke J. Minkus.
So I'm here this morning with Jas Takhar, and he is a realtor in Toronto. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jas, for the audience?
Thanks for having me on today, Luke. Really appreciate it, my man. As you mentioned, I'm a founder of REC Canada, which is a real estate firm that helps buyers, sellers, and investors really in the Southern Ontario market. I'm born and raised in Toronto, so I definitely focus a lot of my business within the Greater Toronto Area, which is there's about a 70-kilometer radius. I'm proud to say last year, out of 18,000 realtors in Canada for Royal LePage, my team was number one. And I like to mention that because, now we have a lot of data in terms of what the market's doing, where investors make money, where we've seen investors lose money. And I also happen to have a podcast myself, so it's always refreshing speaking to a fellow podcaster. And my podcast is REC Experience, a little over about 110, 115 episodes, which primarily focuses on speaking with leaders in the real estate industry, but also entrepreneurs, right? Like people that started a business or now run a company of company grossing over a couple of billion dollars. And the reason I say that I like to speak with both real estate people and entrepreneurs is because I've come to realize that there's a huge, there's a lot of similarities between the two, right? It really does come down to taking action. I've also wrote a book called Real Estate Intelligence, in the process of writing another book kind of in personal development, which should hopefully be out at the end of this year. And then I'm an investor myself as well. And so I like to create wealth through real estate, but something I say a lot is I truly believe real estate is one of the safest investments, but I do think there's a better investment than real estate, and that's investing in yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. So I have a ton of questions for you. Since you're interviewing so many entrepreneurs and realtors, what is the situation in Toronto right now with COVID?
Look, so our sales volume has dropped, and it's dropped significantly. In fact, it's dropped by about 67%. However,
similar here.
Similar where you are as well. That's, but what also has dropped is the amount of listings. So the amount of people putting up homes for sale, which I think is a good thing, because society at large, I think Canadians at large, but I can obviously speak about people in the Greater Toronto Area more in depth, that we stayed home. We listened to our leaders, and we I think we helped stop the spread of this ugly disease. And so it makes sense, right? It makes sense that people weren't it makes sense that the sales volume dropped because a lot of people decided not to put their homes for sale, and then on the other end, a lot of people decided not to go see homes. Now, if we had seen an increase in listings, like homes and condos for sale, and also the sales volume drop at the same time, I think that would create a big problem in terms of values of real estate in the Toronto area. But because we saw both sales drop as well as listings drop, the balance in terms of how many homes are on the market and how many were selling stayed quite neutral. And that's why in the month of April, we saw like a couple of $1,000 increase year over year. So comparing April 2020 to April 2019. And that's just because of just basic supply and demand.
Right. So prices have been pretty stable. What about your fellow realtors? Like, how are people doing economically, personally?
Yeah, so look, I'm proud to say my team of 33 realtors to be exact. I still practice as well as one of the team leads. I still do practice. Overall in that same period of all of April, where the market in Toronto saw 67% sales volume drop, my team, we saw about a 33% drop in sales. And so we obviously weren't selling as much, but it wasn't as significant as the market. And I'm proud to say, I truly am proud to say that we did outperform the market. That is something that we're used to, in all honesty. And I've been doing this for 15 years, and for the past 5-6 years, we've generally outpaced the market. But a lot of realtors are staying home. They are struggling, and there's some realtors even on my team that are as well, but some for good reason as well, Luke. And what I mean by that is that there's been realtors who decided to take this time off and chill back and relax with the family, maybe get into like yoga and personal development. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually commend them. Right. I personally decided not to do that. And I said to myself that, look, this is going to be a time where I'm going to kind of go all in and put the foot down on the pedal and let's see if I can thrive at this time, not just survive. I like kind of situations like this. I'm very sensitive to people lost families and friends. And so putting all that aside, just the whole kerfuffle and concern during this time, I know that that's an opportunity for me to thrive in this situation.
Mm-hmm. So stay optimistic, stay in touch with your clients, I'm guessing. So what have you been doing with your time with the lockdown?
Yeah, so we've been in pandemic now, like lockdown mode, I apologize, coming up to about, I think, 11 weeks. The first 2 weeks, I went straight into my client base and just made phone calls and said, hey, Luke, did you need anything from us? Forget about us selling and talking and anything about real estate. Was there anything that you needed, your family needed, your friends that might need like help with picking up groceries? Because at the end of the day, like you trusted us, Luke, in the past to purchase or sell or invest with us. It's our time to give back. So for 2 weeks, that's all we did. I had every one of my team members on the phone, and we just reached out. It was more, look, we're in the sales and service industry. That means sometimes you sell and sometimes you service. And so we went into service mode. Funny things started to happen though, because a lot of my business is with investors right across the country wanting to invest in Greater Toronto Area. About 2 weeks after, and that's kind of how I knew exactly the time period, my clients started saying, Jas, look, this is a time that we know when you go into a recession that compelling buying opportunities start to present themselves. Go find us something. And we went out and started creating deals. And what I mean by that is that I'm a true believer as an investor. The best deals in real estate are the ones that you create. And so you gotta find them, you gotta put them together, and we were able to do that. I think one of the safest ways during a recession to invest is if you can get like rental guarantees in place. So if you can have a developer, a builder, the seller guarantee the rent, which protects you against a tenant coming in and then maybe losing their job because of COVID or for any other reason. That at the end of the day, that the rent is guaranteed. So we started putting programs in place and started renegotiating with developers and sellers with the angle of, hey, look, if you want one of our investors to pick up this property or this building, we need a rental guarantee in place, and we're looking for 3 years. We asked, wow. Well, yeah. So we asked,
do they normally say yes, or is it a little back and forth before you settle?
Sometimes they kick me out of the room.
Right.
Right. They
That's
say
outrageous.
100%. It's outrageous. Get out of here. Okay, great. And I know it's a numbers game. So I never, ever, when I started to think through what I wanted, what I thought would be best for my clients, which was these rental guarantees, I have whiteboards all over my office. I just started to write down 14, 18, 32. The team started brainstorming. Which 32 or 58, I think we went down to like 68 of our developers to be exact that we've done business with in the past. Who would possibly give us a rental guarantee? We just got on the phone. We heard tons and tons of no's, but that's the story of my life, Luke. I've heard way more no's in my life than I've heard yeses, but it's those small,
Right.
it's those yeses that change the course of my life.
I find, and I'm sure you'll agree, the more you talk to people, the more you know which direction to take. So, like, for example, if you're getting constant pushback on 36 months, but developers were saying, 30 months we would look at, you kind of know which angle to take. And then you go, that guy I spoke to a week ago said he'd be open to 30 months.
100%.
I'm going to call him back, right? You got to keep moving. Keep the momentum.
I'm a son of immigrants from Punjab, India, and my mom negotiated over apples back home, and so for me to ask for ask for 36, hope for 30 to 24.
Right.
They'll say 12. I'll say I know the game, right? I'm gonna ask for high. You're gonna start low. We're gonna meet somewhere. We'll figure this out.
Right. Yeah. Keep the conversation going.
That's exactly. I think the line that I use a lot is, look, Mr. and Mrs. Developer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, can we just keep the lines of communication open? Because the timing might not be right now, like it might not be good right now, but if we keep the lines of communication open with phone calls or meetups or Zooms and emails, then in 6 months it might be right.
Have you been able to do like condo deals with the rent guarantee?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So I
it's
have
not just developers.
No. Well, when I say developers, I also mean like builders and guys and girls that are doing condo buildings. And so it might be, there's a project on the east part of downtown. That was probably the first one that we got the rental guarantee for during the pandemic. And I did end up actually getting 3 years. It was a condo project, 8-story condo project, 142 units. No, sorry, 47 units, not 140, 47 units. And I got rental guarantees for 8 of the units, and 8 of my clients picked it up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's a typical day like for you? How many hours do you sleep, and then what are you doing with most of your time?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of sleep is very, very underrated, and so I think you need to sleep.
Right.
I usually do about. I'm good with 6 to 7 hours. Anything less, I very rarely get less than that. The odd weekend, I might go to 8, 9 hours because I'm just drained on a Sunday. That's kind of the day. That's my family day. But generally, I'll get my 6 to 7 hours. I feel very, very fresh. I don't eat breakfast. I usually break the fast, so to speak, at around 11:30 to 12. Just kind of keeps me sharp. I usually have a coffee and a tea between that around that 7 a.m. 7:30, call it, to about 11:30. I'll have a coffee and a tea, and I drive into my office, which is about an hour in. I live right outside the city of Toronto in a place called Brampton.
I grew up in Mississauga.
Oh,
so
did you? Okay, so
I know all the neighborhoods. Yeah.
Awesome. So I live in Brampton, north part of Brampton, kind of border Brampton and Caledon. Takes me about an hour to get in, which is my favorite time because A, I'm alone. B, if there's some like urgent calls I got to get to with my team, I can. But what I like 90% of the time, it's I apply what I call NET. NET, no extra time, meaning that's where I get my podcasts in, my audio books. Maybe I do some dictation for the book that I have coming up. But that's my time alone. And so, I get in, I try to shoot in for about 8:15, 8:30 a.m. I get another about 45 minutes alone before my squad, as I call them, start coming in, which consists of a media team, full-time media, internal in-house team, as well as my in-house admins and directors. They start to kind of roll in 10 to 9, and then we start attacking, and then I'm usually here till about, I'm going to say about 8 o'clock-ish, around there, sometimes 9. I'll go for 11, 12 hours easily, Monday to Friday, and then do about 5, 6 hours on a Saturday, and then I completely shut down on a Sunday. And really what the day consists of is I'm in client services, right? So there's putting out a lot of fires, things that just come up in the business because I've been doing this for such a long time. And it's just, like, I think the team around me, that squad that I mentioned, we produce about 20 to 25 pieces of content every single day on all different platforms. Wow. So I got videographers running around here. I have like a cartoonist. I have a copywriter. I have a whole, as I said, in-house media team. And I do product launch. Like I'll do do an actual condo launch as well. Generally the first person that our clients speak to, and then it kind of gets delegated. The process will get delegated to someone on my team.
Right. So what are some of your favorite audio and podcasts that you're listening to?
So I listen to a lot of audio books. There's probably only one podcast that I listen to on the way in, and that's Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast. That's probably the only one. I had an opportunity to have him on my podcast, and he, I spent a good 3-4 hours in his office with him and his team, and I got to learn what he calls the content model, how to take a macro piece of content and put it into about 20 to 25 pieces of micro content. And so I've went all in on that about 1.5 years ago, changed the course of my business, changed the course of my life. And but then there's the books that I listen to, and it's just a myriad of books. There's the Thank You Economy, which is one of his. There's Malcolm Gladwell. I'm just kind of trying to Success Principles from Jack Canfield. Other ones of like the Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. I generally recycle the same ones, to be honest with you, because of the fact of that. I know that when you hear something for the first time, the brain can only really retain anywhere from 10 to 13%. I need to hear, me personally, I need to hear things over and over and over again. I'm a big believer that whatever goes into the brain will come out of your action, within your action. So garbage in, garbage out, positive in, positive out.
Definitely. Have you always been this motivated of a person, like since you were young?
Yeah.
Into self-development and sales?
I've been in sales and service for 25 years, Luke. So when I was at the age of 12, 13, I got my first paper route, just fell in love with the fact that, I get to knock on people's doors, try to build rapport with them. You get a sense of who likes you, who doesn't like you. And then at the end of the week or whatever it was, 2 weeks, I got money for it. And I started to, I liked the freedom of that. If I wanted to buy, I used to spend all my money on arcades when I used to get it, or fries and gravy. But I just liked that freedom that it gave me. And then I quickly realized also with the paper route is if my friends were scared to ask the paper company for a route. So I would just broker the deals for them. I would take all the routes and I would start giving it to them, get a cut out of it. And then I went into shoe sales. I went into the banking industry. Even in the banking industry, I was in a sales and service position. Went into car sales for a couple of years. Learned a lot in car sales, and then it's been real estate for 15 years. It's always been who I'm very, very self-aware of what I'm good at and what I'm not, and 97% of things I suck at. Actually, I can't hang up a wall. I can't hang up a picture on a wall. I can't write an email. I like grammar is not my strong suit. Math, actually, funny enough, wasn't my strong suit in school. But as I started, when you're in sales, you just using the calculator. You got it. Yeah. For me, it was a lot of practice, right? And I think it's very important. We have people who go to school and become doctors and lawyers and engineers. That is very, very important. It's just not the way that I learned. I needed extra time. I needed someone to sit down with me, kind of really show me how things kind of worked. And obviously in our school system, anywhere in Ontario, not that the teachers don't try, but they can only do so much. And I needed extra time. And so I got that through personal development. I got that through books, seminars, and audiobooks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's your prognosis for the real estate market in Toronto and Canada in general?
Well, I mean, specific, like I think in Canada in general, I think we're going to probably see a negative percentage overall, but that's the macro market. And so anybody who's listening to this, I want you to be very, very careful when you see in the headlines that the even values, forget sales volumes, because that really doesn't mean much, but that even if the numbers at the end of this year in December come back as that the macro market was down by 1% or 2%, in terms of values, you need to, whoever's listening to this, you need to look at your micro market. So for example, in the Greater Toronto Area, there's probably a little over or 500 micro markets, you need to really dive into what's happening with your type of home on your street, in your subdivision, within the last 60, 90 days. I think in Toronto, our fundamentals have been, and I truly believe will continue to be very, very strong. We don't manufacture really anything here. It's all service-based. Pre-COVID, we were expecting about 200,000 people every single year for the next 10 years. I think at the end of 10 years, we were going to be at obviously around 2 million people. I actually think that's going to happen sooner than later. Reason being, because the rest of the world is going to be looking at Canada and saying, they're at it again. We took care of our people, right, Luke? Like, if you think about it, I mean, I never go on political rants, but if you think about it, you had a government that was put in a very, very interesting situation, right? And they acted quickly. They acted quickly to get money in people's accounts. I understand for some people, $2,000 a month is not much, but I mean, if you look at across the world, there's a lot of places that didn't get anything. Right. And so we got something quickly. And I think the rest of the world is going to be looking at us. And I say again, because if you think back to the recession in late 2008 or early 2009, the world looked at our banking system and said, how did you guys do it? Like, how did you guys protect yourselves? Well, we're just very conservative. You know, some would maybe even say we're a little chicken, right? But I think we're very, very conservative. Our banking system, if you have a job, you have good credit, and you have a great down payment, you're still going to get put through the ringer to get a mortgage here.
That's true.
Our banking system, right? Our banking system is just tough. And it's been good. Like when you're personally going through it and trying to get a mortgage, I know it sucks. It's like, oh my God, like I have a good job. I have a good credit. And I have a good down payment. And why are they putting me through the ringer? Why? Because it's actually good for our economy. And so the rest of the world looked at us back then 10, 11, 12 years ago. And I think they're going to look at us again and say, that's the place to live. Look, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a son of immigrants, and my parents came to Canada in 1973, 1974. And this was the place they wanted to come their whole lives. This is it. Like, you got to get to Canada. And I'm speaking to people in India and obviously Toronto being such a very multicultural city. I have people in my office. We have 1,100 agents. So you can imagine I can probably touch every single community. And I'm hearing the same thing from everyone. Everyone in their home countries is saying, like, I can't wait to get to Canada. I just want to get to Canada. Now, most people, when they think about Canada, they think about Vancouver and they think about Toronto, right? And so it's one of the two places. It's always, if you just look back for take a big sample size of 40 years, those two cities have generally done very, very well when it comes to real estate. It all comes down to population. Once you look at it starts off with location, and location will determine the population because that is the demand that drives values high, and especially if supply, again, those two cities where in Vancouver you have the ocean, so you can't build there, and then you have mountains, so you're kind of landlocked. Toronto's very similar in that sense, where we have the lake, and then we have what's known as the Greenbelt legislation, which was put into place 15 years ago in 2005, which does not allow builders to build up or build any subdivisions. And so we're kind of landlocked. We're on a real estate island, so to speak, right? And so just simple and basic supply and demand.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to fundamentals, I've always had a concept that if the rental market is too disconnected from the sales market, then we have a bubble. So what I mean is, like, if the rent you can get for a condo, for example, is totally disconnected from what the mortgage is going to cost on that condo, eventually, things got to come back into line. So can you tell us, what is it like in Toronto? Can an investor buy a condo, put a tenant in there, and cover his mortgage?
Yeah, he can, but right now, so if he's buying something on the resale market, you're probably looking at about 25% down. As an investor, you need the lender's requirements are 20%. But if you do put 25% down, your rental income will cover your expenses, your mortgage payment, your property tax, your maintenance fees. Okay, with 25% down. Now, if I do about 200 of these a year where my investors are purchasing pre-construction, pre-built condos. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at a pre-built condo, you're buying today for something that's going to be built 3 years out. When you run the numbers, you can't run them based on today's rents. It just doesn't make sense. You run them with a little bit of a bump, conservative. I'm not saying being outrageous by any means, being ultra conservative. 4.5% year over year increase on rent is very conservative. In fact, we've seen about 11 to 11.5% increase. So using 4 to 4.5, I think is very fair. When you run the numbers, you'll know that 20% down in 3 years for a condo that's going to be built in 3 to 4 years, your rental income will cover your expenses.
That's good. That's good to know.
Right. I was going to say, sorry, Luke, I just think when people are running numbers, they're just not running them properly.
Right. That's quite often the case. That's very true. And what sort of down payments do developers require? So if I want to make a deposit on a condo, what kind of deposit structure are you guys working with?
So again, it's a full 20%. However, it is in installments. What we normally see is 5% in 30 days, 5% 6 to 9 months, 5% a year to like a year and 2-3 months. So now you're at 15%, and then the final 5% on occupancy, which is generally 3 months away.
Right. And that's what the bank wants. The bank wants 20%.
Yes, and so does the developer wants to see that, because they want to get to 10% within the first year, so then they can get their construction financing. So you'll generally see 10% within a year.
Makes sense. Any exciting new projects in Toronto?
I have one coming out in the next 7 to 10 days. It's in an area called Etobicoke. You would know that, Luke. Mm-hmm. Just by the Queensway, it's been fully it's been developed now. Multi-million-dollar homes, but there's a condo project that's coming out that's quite exclusive, because it's only going to have about 148 units in it, 147 to 148 units. Our city right now is downtown Toronto is trading at about 13 to 13.50 price per square foot. This is about 15 minutes away from downtown Toronto, a drive with traffic, and our traffic does get bad sometimes here. We're coming in at $900 price per square foot.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a significant difference for only being away like 15 minutes, a drive.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Do you see the industry changing much with COVID and technology? Are you doing a lot of virtual walkthroughs with people? Are you showing clients homes today? Yeah. So I myself, obviously, I work with a lot of investors, and so mine is done generally on Zoom and phone calls. But my team, my 33 realtors, out of which I'm going to say about 80% of them work with buyers and sellers for like what we call kind of regular real estate, right? Your first condo, you're moving up and moving down, and they're all implemented virtual open houses, virtual viewings and showings. I actually think it's been something really neat to see because we're getting more done. My team, we're watching our team get a lot more done in the first stage. And so, once we reopen up fully, I wouldn't be surprised if buyers say, especially somebody who's going to live in the home, if they say, you know what, Jas, can you do me a favor? Can you go do it virtually for me? I'm going to do it. I want to sit in my pajamas at home. You do that virtually, and if I like it, then I'll come see it. And I think that's actually great. I think that's fantastic, because if then, and this is both if I'm protecting the buyer or the seller, I think it's going to be great, because if that client wants to actually physically go see it, you know that they're that much more qualified. You're not wasting your time. You're not wasting their time. And if you work in if you farm, and that's the term that we use obviously in our industry, like which really just means if you work a specific neighborhood, you're there anyways. You should be seeing these homes where, I think realtors, and I don't knock anyone else's business model. I stay in my
my lane and kind of have tunnel vision in that sense. But I do think the industry got a little lazy, right? Like it was like, here, take a look at this listing, or let's go see homes right now. Now it's going to be like, no, you go check out your inventory, realtor. Go see what's being listed. While you're there, do a virtual tour. I actually am loving that more people are getting comfortable with the camera. I love the camera. I need 4 or 5. There's 2 around me right now as we speak, right? Because I like to get all those different angles and stuff and so on and so forth. And so I think we're going to start to see a lot more stuff happen virtually. We already were doing virtual signing, like using softwares like DocuSign. So I'm not surprised that we were able to act quite quickly when it came to executing on offers and agreement of purchase and sales. But I am surprised how many people got comfortable with the video camera.
Yeah, that's a Gary Vaynerchuk thing. I mean, he has cameras following all the time.
I know. I am very blessed to have not only meet him but spend some a lot of quality time with himself and his team. And just like in any part of my life, I've always implemented imitation, assimilation, and then innovation, right? And so I follow that in really everything that I do. And it's funny, wherever I don't follow it, I don't get a lot of results. And so you can't see my 2-4 of a pack here in my belly, but it's a part where I obviously haven't followed it to a T, right? And so where everywhere else where I have in my business and in my investing, it's where I've won, because I've been able to create a pretty cool content machine, and I've been able to create a lot of wealth through personally investing. And that's all because I just copied other people, what they were doing, made sure I was executing it, and then I started innovating it and making it like part of Jas's world.
Right. Your own.
Make it my own. Things, yeah, my own take on things, the way that I speak. I'm born in the northern part of Toronto in an area called Rexdale. I wasn't even supposed to be here doing this, Right. And so everything to me over and above just like basic needs is a bonus now.
Yeah. Well, this is inspirational for me to listen to. Can you tell us just for a couple of minutes about your podcast? What it's about, some of the guests you had, what you're trying to accomplish with that podcast.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I only had personal education, and I learned from people's conversations, either directly to me as through mentors, or just through audiobooks. And so I have always had a thirst for knowledge. And so the podcast, once I heard the name, I was like, what the heck is this? I Googled it a couple of years ago, and shout out to my then executive producer, Laura Alto Stewart, who acted kind of as the executive producer, but then she started co-hosting with me. I think she just wanted to get on camera and so on and so forth. And so her and I started co-hosting the podcast together. And it was really just to allow people to be a fly on the wall and conversations that I wanted to have or I was already having. And so I'm proud to say now, I have a little over 110 episodes. It's on all podcast platforms. It's called REC Experience. I sit down with people who have a net worth of a couple of $1 billion to somebody who's just starting out their first business, somebody who has 1,000 doors in investing with real estate, and somebody who's just starting their journey when it comes to investing in real estate. And so some of my guests include Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, David McCourt, who's a gentleman who literally revolutionized the telecom industry. Not a lot of people know the name, but once you start Googling him, you'll start to get an idea of all the stuff that he's done. $1 Million Listing Agents, Ryan Serhan, Josh Altman, Tracy Tudor, one of Canada's largest investment groups, the two business partners, Scott McGilvery from HETV, and the president and CEO of that investment group called Keyspire, Michael Saraceni. There's so many more, and I apologize for anybody who might be listening if I've had you on and I can't just off the top of my head, because there's been a little over 110 episodes.
Right.
And then there's people that you would never know unless you heard the podcast and heard their story. I truly believe everyone has a story, and I want to tell people's stories because I think we can learn from people's mistakes, but we can also build on their successes.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So I'm going to put links to your podcast in this episode. And I really appreciate your time today. I can see you're a super busy guy, but I can tell you love talking about real estate and you love what you do. So I'm really grateful for the time.
You're welcome, Luke. Thank you so much. I mean, keep doing what you're doing. You're getting out there. I can tell you that just producing content changed the course of my life. I mean, I'm speaking to you, and you're in BC now, and speaking to somebody last week from Nigeria, and the week before from Portugal, the week before from Saudi Arabia. I never dreamt of this, right? I just wanted to start a podcast in the hopes of 10, 20 people would listen. And then I said, okay, look, I think my clients will listen. Because they've done business with me for so long. I never saw it go out to listeners in Australia. Like I never thought of that. And now I get DMs on Instagram and emails probably 3 to 4 times a day that they heard of someone's story and it inspired them. And if I had even a 0.1% factor in that makes me put my head down on my pillow very, very comfortably at night.
Right. Awesome. One last thing. So this may seem a little unusual, but the way I've grown the I Love Kelowna podcast is at the end of each episode, I get someone to nominate someone. And the way I put it is it's someone that you would enjoy listening to me interview. Anybody you know. And it really relates to Kelowna, but also real estate. So I don't know if you know anybody on the West Coast that you would enjoy hearing.
I do. There's a gentleman named Cameron Manning, definitely in Vancouver. I'm not sure if he's in the local area of Kelowna, but he's a realtor in the Vancouver area, in the BC area there, and I have introduced, and we have a lot of mutual clients. He is very investor savvy, and his name is Cameron Manning, Cameron with a C. If you email my Luke Leasing, who you were speaking with, and I still do call him my Luke until he decides to change that. He's my 19-year-old phenom, just like Luke Skywalker. And so shoot him an email. He'll send you the contact info for Cameron Manning, but I definitely think you should have him on your podcast.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, it's a great way to grow a podcast because now I can call Cameron and say, Jas told me to get in touch with you, and it just grows like that. So
100%. It's if you don't mind, I might just imitate you on that one.
Yeah, I think it's a great.
Awesome.
It's one of the best things I did, and I actually heard that from Garrett Vaynerchuk.
Oh, did you? I never caught that one. That's awesome.
In his book, Crushing It.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic.
Has a chapter on podcasts.
Does he?
And that's how I got the concept for this podcast. So, yeah,
awesome. I actually really like that. I like that little touch at the end of yours. I will definitely. I'm a pretty quick learner, and I'll execute on that really quickly. So
awesome.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me. You could have, obviously you could ask anyone to be on your podcast, and you asked me, and so that means a lot to me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jas.
Thank you.
Hope to talk to you soon.
For sure.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Luke Mankus is a realtor. He loves what he does. We asked Luke if he had any regrets about moving here in 2011, and he always says, yeah, one regret, and that is he didn't move here sooner. When Luke came here, he didn't know anyone. He didn't know the neighborhoods or anything or anyone besides his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. So he knows what it's like. Now, he's an expert and has helped well over 100 single people, couples, families, and investors with their real estate needs in the Okanagan. If you're new to our beautiful city, Luke can help you get connected with great lawyers, dentists, carpenters, landscapers, swimming pool installers, you name it. And whether you're new to Kelowna or not, Luke knows real estate. He can help you find a great property, negotiate a good deal, and hold your hand all the way through the process until the day you get your shiny new set of keys. Luke is known as a no-pressure kind of guy. He's had clients where it took even a year or more to get them into a property. He just doesn't believe in rushing things. On the other hand, when you decide it's time to act, he's diligent and he'll work day and night until the job is done. Give Luke Mankus a call or a text message at any time. 778-215-4273. Again, that's 778-215-4273. 778-215-4273 to chat with Luke about real estate.